The grand ceremony hall of the Galactic Academy of Xenobiological Sciences pulsed with the combined energy of 1,000 species. Holographic displays shimmered along curved walls, showcasing the most fearsome predators from across the known universe. The occasion marked the annual classification ceremony, where planets receive their official designations based on the lethality of their indigenous life forms. Professor Alina Dravik, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in a severe knot, approached the hovering podium. Her reputation as the foremost authority on Death World fauna preceded her, and the assembly fell silent as she activated the central projection. "Esteemed colleagues, honored guests, and cadets of the Academy," she began, her voice echoing through the chamber. "Today we recognize those worlds whose evolutionary crucibles have forged the most formidable life in our galaxy." The holographic display shifted to reveal a planet of familiar blue and green. "Earth," Professor Dravik announced, her tone carrying a note of finality. "After centuries of observation and analysis, the Galactic Council has officially elevated Earth from Death World to Monster Factory status." A ripple of murmurs spread through the audience. Monster Factory, the highest classification of planetary danger, reserved for worlds whose evolutionary pressures had created not just killers, but nightmares. The diversity and adaptability of Earth's predators, the toxicity of its flora, the microscopic terrors of its bacteria and viruses, all contribute to an ecosystem unparalleled in its capacity for death. Professor Dravik gestured to the scrolling images of Earth's most lethal organisms. From the depths of its oceans to the heights of its mountains, Earth has proven itself worthy of this designation. In the third row of the assembly, a solitary figure sat motionless amid the shifting forms of his alien classmates. Kai Arden, the only human cadet at the Academy, kept his expression carefully neutral as his homeworld was declared a breeding ground for monsters. "And now," Professor Dravik continued, her eyes scanning the audience, "I present this term's highest academic achiever, the cadet who has demonstrated unparalleled understanding of predator psychology, ecosystem management, and biohazard containment." The display shifted again, and Kai felt his stomach tighten as his own face appeared before the assembly, 12 feet tall and unavoidable. "Cadet Kai Arden of Earth," Professor Dravik announced, her voice betraying the faintest hint of surprise, "has achieved the highest marks in Academy history. Please join me in recognizing Earth's champion." As Kai rose to his feet, he could feel the weight of 1,000 alien gazes, some curious, some disbelieving, some hostile. He moved toward the stage with measured steps, conscious of the irony that twisted through this moment like a serpent. Earth's champion, a human who had spent his life not hunting monsters, but understanding them, not killing the beasts of his homeworld, but connecting with them. As he took his place beside Professor Dravik, facing the assembly of the galaxy's brightest minds, a single question burned in his thoughts. Can a world defined by its horrors produce a protector whose greatest strength is empathy? The answer, he knew, would be written in the days to come. The Galactic Academy of Xenobiological Sciences occupied its own artificial planetoid, a marvel of engineering that housed samples of ecosystems from thousands of worlds. From the outside, it resembled a massive geodesic sphere, its surface a patchwork of different atmospheric conditions, biomes, and gravitational fields. Inside, the central administrative ring connected to specialized biodomes via transparent tubes, allowing students and faculty to observe the carefully maintained habitats without disrupting them. The Academy served as both research facility and educational institution, training the next generation of xenobiologists, conservation specialists, and planetary security officers. Kai made his way through the crowded thoroughfare of the Commons, where the gravity and atmosphere were maintained at a compromise suitable for most oxygen-breathing species. After the ceremony, he'd retreated to his quarters, but now hunger drove him to the central dining hall. There he is, Earth's finest monster, called a voice that managed to sound both melodic and mocking. Kai turned to see Lyra Voss perched on one of the elevated platforms designed for her species. The Vraxisian's iridescent exoskeleton caught the light as she unfolded her 4 upper limbs in a gesture that, among her kind, indicated amused contempt. "Congratulations, human," she continued, her mandibles clicking softly. "I didn't realize they gave academic honors for being soft." "Thank you, Lyra," Kai replied evenly. "Your dueling record is equally impressive. Second place must be quite an achievement for you." The Vraxisian's compound eyes flashed, the bioluminescent patterns beneath her carapace shifting to orange. Anger, if Kai remembered his xenobiology correctly. "Second place to a fluke?" she retorted. "We'll see who's first when it comes to the field trials." She leaped from her perch with startling grace, landing beside him. Though slender, she stood nearly a foot taller than Kai, forcing him to look up to meet her gaze. "Your world may breed impressive monsters. Human, but mine breeds warriors who know how to handle them." With that, she stalked away, her segmented legs carrying her through the crowd, which parted instinctively before her. Kai sighed and continued toward the dining hall. He had grown accustomed to such encounters since arriving at the academy 3 years ago. As the only human in his cohort, he was simultaneously a curiosity and a target, the representative of a world whose reputation evoked both fear and fascination. The dining hall itself was a testament to the diversity of the academy. Different atmospheric sections were separated by thin energy fields, allowing species with incompatible breathing requirements to dine in proximity. Nutrition dispensers calibrated to thousands of biological profiles lined the walls, providing sustenance tailored to each student's physiology. Kai selected a simple meal of synthesized proteins and carbohydrates, modeled after Earth cuisine but produced from standardized nutrient stocks. As he looked for an open seat, he noticed a familiar figure waving him over. "Kai, over here," called Mira, a centaurian whose bioluminescent skin pulsed with friendly blue light. Unlike most of his classmates, Mira had always been kind to him, perhaps because her home world, like Earth, was classified as a death world. He joined her at a table occupied by a small group of diverse species, all from worlds at the higher end of the danger classification. "We were just discussing the new designation," Mira said as Kai sat down. "Monster Factory. That's quite the promotion. Or demotion, depending on how you look at it," Kai replied, poking at his food. "Nonsense," rumbled Drav, a massive Ursidian whose thick fur concealed an exoskeleton capable of withstanding extreme pressures. "It's an honor. My world has been trying to achieve Monster Factory status for generations." "That's because your people worship strength above all else," countered Esper, a crystalline entity who communicated through vibrations translated by a device at the table's center. "Some civilizations consider such classifications a mark of shame." "Not shame," Kai said quietly. "Just misunderstanding. Earth isn't just about monsters. It's about balance." "Balance?" Drav snorted, sending ripples through his beverage. "Your oceans have predators that can swallow spacecraft. Your forests have plants that digest mammals alive. Your microscopic organisms have decimated your own populations repeatedly. Where's the balance in that?" "The balance is in adaptation," Kai explained, warming to the subject despite himself. This was, after all, his specialization. Earth's harshness created diversity. Every predator has its prey, every toxin its antidote. For every monster, there's a guardian. "And what would you be?" "Arden," came a new voice, cool and precise. Kai turned to see Professor Dravik standing behind him, her expression unreadable. "Monster or guardian?" she clarified, one eyebrow raised. The table fell silent, all eyes on Kai. "Neither. Professor," he answered carefully. "I'm a student. I'm still learning which I might become. A faint smile touched Professor Dravik's lips. A diplomatic answer. But field trials begin tomorrow, and diplomacy rarely survives first contact with a predator. I'll be curious to see which path you choose when theory meets reality. She nodded to the table and continued on her way, leaving Kai with the uncomfortable sensation that he had just been issued both a challenge and a warning. What did she mean by field trials tomorrow? Kai asked Mira. I thought they weren't scheduled until next week. Mira's skin pulsed with concerned purple. You didn't get the notification? Commander Helion moved them up. All senior cadets are to report to the Earth Biodome at 0600 hours. Kai's appetite vanished. The Earth Biodome, of all the possible trial locations, it had to be the one place in the academy that still haunted his dreams. Did the notification mention what specimen we'd be working with? He asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Only that it's from the Predator archive, Drav replied. Something newly acquired and particularly challenging. Rumor has it, Esper added, their crystalline form vibrating softly, that Commander Helion requested something special for this trial. Something that would truly test the top cadets. Something special. From Earth. Kai fought to keep his expression neutral as old memories threatened to surface. Memories of teeth and claws, of blood on leaves, of screams that still echoed in his nightmares. Well, he said, forcing a smile, I suppose I'd better get some rest. Then, as he left the dining hall, Kai could feel the weight of his homeworld's new designation settling on his shoulders. Monster Factory. A planet that produced nightmares. Tomorrow he would face one of those nightmares again, in front of classmates who expected him to be either monster or guardian. But which would he choose to be? Kai's quarters were Spartan by academy standards. A simple sleeping platform, study terminal, and environmental controls calibrated to Earth norms. He had declined the holographic windows that many cadets used to simulate their homeworlds, preferring instead the neutral gray walls of the standard issue room. Tonight, however, he found himself wishing for a glimpse of Earth, not its deadly jungles or treacherous oceans, but the quiet meadow behind his childhood home, where wildflowers had pushed through the ruins of what had once been a city. He sat cross-legged on his sleeping platform, eyes closed, breathing deeply as he prepared for the meditation that had become his nightly ritual. Professor Dravik had once commented that his unusual ability to form empathic connections with predatory species might be related to his meditative practice. Kai wasn't certain of the correlation, but he knew that without this mental discipline, the nightmares would return. As his breathing slowed and his mind cleared, Kai directed his thoughts toward the challenge ahead. Field trials were a standard part of academy training, designed to test cadets' practical application of xenobiological theory. Typically, they involved observation, containment, or management of specimens in the Academy's vast collection of alien flora and fauna. But Commander Threx Helion, the Academy's intimidating field instructor, was known for his unorthodox methods. A veteran of the Galactic Security Force's Xenohazard Division, Helion believed in survival of the fittest training techniques that often pushed cadets beyond their breaking points. What specimen would Helion choose from Earth's catalog of horrors? And why had the commander specifically scheduled the trial in the Earth Biodome? Kai's concentration wavered as unwanted memories intruded. A flash of movement in tall grass, the sound of his mother's voice calling his name, the sudden silence that followed. He pushed the images away, focusing again on his breathing. Whatever awaited him tomorrow, he would face it with the discipline and knowledge he had gained in his years at the academy. He would not allow old fears to cloud his judgment. A soft chime from his terminal interrupted his meditation. Kai opened his eyes, momentarily disoriented as he transitioned back to full awareness. The terminal indicated an incoming communication, unusual at this hour. He activated the screen to find Professor Dravik's face looking back at him, her expression grave. "Cadet Arden," she said without preamble, "I believe you should know what you'll be facing tomorrow. Kai felt a chill run through him. Is this standard procedure, Professor? No, she admitted. But neither is Commander Helion's selection for tomorrow's trial. He's chosen a specimen that was only recently added to our collection, a thornback panther. The words hit Kai like a physical blow. His vision blurred momentarily, and he had to steady himself against the edge of his sleeping platform. I see you recognize the species, Professor Dravik observed quietly. Yes, Kai managed. They were native to the region where I grew up. What he didn't say, what wasn't in his academy records, was that a thornback panther had been responsible for the death of his parents, that he had witnessed the attack as a child, hidden in the hollow of an ancient tree while the creature tore his family apart. What I find concerning, Professor Dravik continued, is that this particular specimen has been fitted with neural dampeners. I protested this modification, but Commander Helion insisted it was necessary for cadet safety. Neural dampeners, Kai repeated, his mind racing to process the implications. But that would prevent any empathic connection. Precisely, which means your particular talent will be neutralized in tomorrow's trial. Kai understood then why she had contacted him. Without his ability to form empathic links with predatory creatures, he would be forced to rely on conventional methods of containment or control, methods that his Vraxizian rival, Lyra Vos, excelled at. Thank you for the warning, Professor, he said. Professor Dravik studied him through the screen. I didn't tell you this to discourage you. Cadet Arden, I told you because I believe in informed consent. Commander Helion seems determined to prove that Earth's monster factory designation applies to its human inhabitants as well. He wants to see if you'll respond to threat with the same lethal efficiency as your planet's other predators. And what do you want to see, Professor? Kai asked. A flicker of something, perhaps respect, crossed her features. I want to see if Earth can produce something more interesting than just another monster. She paused. Rest well. Cadet, tomorrow will test more than your academic knowledge. The screen went dark, leaving Kai alone with thoughts more turbulent than before. A thornback panther, neural dampeners, a test designed to push him toward violence. He closed his eyes again, attempting to resume his meditation, but the panthers stalked the edges of his mind, their iridescent scales catching the light, their triple-rowed teeth glistening with saliva. Sleep, when it finally came, brought no rest, only memories disguised as dreams and the sensation of running through endless grass, pursued by shadows with emerald eyes. The Earth Biodome occupied an entire section of the Academy's outer ring, its environment meticulously calibrated to replicate the diverse ecosystems of humanity's homeworld. Upon entering, visitors encountered a series of airlock chambers designed to prevent cross-contamination between the carefully maintained habitat and the rest of the facility. Kai arrived at the designated entrance at 0545 hours, 15 minutes before the scheduled start of the field trial. Several other cadets were already gathered, including Mira, whose skin pulsed with nervous yellow light, and Drav, who appeared as impassive as ever. Lyra Vos stood apart from the group, performing a series of stretching exercises that showcased her exoskeleton's remarkable flexibility. She acknowledged Kai's arrival with a brief flash of her compound eyes, but offered no greeting. At precisely X100, the exterior doors slid open to reveal Commander Threx Helion. The Arcturian officer's imposing frame filled the doorway, his leathery gray skin bearing the ceremonial scars of his many successful hunts. The breathing apparatus that covered the lower portion of his face emitted a faint hissing sound with each exhalation. Cadets! Helion's voice rumbled through the vocoder that translated his native speech patterns into standard galactic. Today's field trial will test your practical application of containment protocols for Class 5 predatory organisms. He activated a holographic display that projected between himself and the assembled students. The image that appeared sent a shock of recognition through Kai, a thornback panther in mid-leap, its serpentine body extended to its full 4-meter length. the bony protrusions along its spine fully erect. This specimen was captured on Earth approximately 1 standard month ago. Commander Helion continued, "It has been fitted with neural dampeners to prevent telepathic interference and released into the central rainforest section of the biodome." Kai noted the emphasis Helion placed on telepathic interference, a clear reference to his own abilities. "Your objective is simple," the commander stated. "Capture the specimen alive and bring it to the containment facility at the north end of the biodome. You may use any equipment from the standard field kit." He gestured to a row of identical packs resting on a nearby bench. "Work individually or in teams as you see fit. But be aware, only those who actively participate in the successful capture will receive credit for the trial." Helion's breathing apparatus hissed loudly as he surveyed the group. "One final note. This specimen has been without nutrition for 72 hours to simulate natural hunting conditions. It will perceive you as prey. Act accordingly." With that ominous warning, he stepped aside, allowing access to the airlock that led into the biodome. "The trial begins now and ends at 1800 hours, or when the specimen is captured. Any cadet not out of the biodome by the deadline will receive a failing grade and a mandatory medical evaluation." His gaze lingered on Kai. "Good hunting." The cadets moved forward to collect their field kits. Kai hung back, watching as Lyra selected hers with confident movements, checking the contents with practiced efficiency. "Nervous, Earth boy?" she asked without looking up from her inventory. "Afraid you might have to hurt one of your precious monsters?" "The thornback is a specialized ambush predator," Kai replied evenly. "It's not nervousness to be cautious around an apex hunter." Lyra snapped her kit closed and straightened to her full height. "On my world, we don't study apex predators. We become them." With that, she strode toward the airlock, her segmented legs carrying her with predatory grace. Kai approached the remaining field kits and selected one, quickly assessing its contents. Standard restraints, a medical scanner, emergency rations, a short-range communication device, a multi-tool, and a neural disruptor, the latter capable of temporarily incapacitating most organisms without causing permanent harm. He hesitated over the neural disruptor. Against a normal thornback panther, such a device would be marginally effective at best. Against one with neural dampeners already in place, its utility was questionable. As he deliberated, Mira approached, her skin now a determined blue. "Partners," she suggested. "A centaurian and a human might make a good team against an Earth predator." Kai considered the offer. Working with Mira would certainly improve his chances of completing the trial successfully, but it might also put her at risk. "The thornback hunts by sensing body heat and electrical signals," he explained. "Your bioluminescence would make you a primary target." "I can control my emissions," she countered, "and 2 sets of eyes are better than 1. Before Kai could respond, a deep voice interrupted them. 3 would be even better," Drav rumbled, joining their conversation. "My exoskeleton would provide some protection against those thorns." Kai looked between his 2 classmates, touched by their willingness to work with him despite the risks. But something held him back, a sense that this particular trial was meant specifically for him, a test designed by Commander Helion to force a confrontation with his past. "I appreciate the offer," he said finally. "But I think this is something I need to face alone." Mira's skin flickered with concern, but she nodded in understanding. "Be careful. Kai, remember what you told us yesterday. Earth is about balance, not just monsters." "If you change your mind, our comm channels will be open," Drav added, his usually gruff voice softening slightly. Kai nodded his thanks and moved toward the airlock, the field kit secured to his belt. As the outer door closed behind him and the decontamination cycle began, he focused on his breathing, centering himself as he had been taught. The inner door slid open, and Earth, or at least the Academy's precise recreation of it, waited on the other side. The humid air of the rainforest section enveloped him immediately, carrying the rich scents of loam, vegetation, and the faint musk of animal life. Towering trees stretched toward the biodome's distant ceiling, where advanced lighting systems mimicked the spectrum and intensity of Earth's sun. Kai stepped onto the narrow path that wound into the forest, all his senses alert. Somewhere in this carefully crafted wilderness, a nightmare from his childhood waited, its mind artificially closed to him, its hunger deliberately stoked. He moved forward, deeper into the green shadows, leaving the security of the entrance behind. With each step, he felt himself transforming, not into the monster Commander Helion seemed to expect, but into something else entirely. A hunter. Yes, but one who sought understanding, not blood. The rainforest section of the Earth biodome was a masterpiece of xenobiological engineering. Every plant, insect, and microorganism had been selected and balanced to create a self-sustaining ecosystem that accurately represented one of Earth's most complex biomes. The air was thick with moisture, and the sounds of artificial life, programmed bird songs, the rustle of leaves, the occasional distant call of a simulated primate, created an immersive experience that even Kai, native to the planet being replicated, found impressive. He moved through the undergrowth with the careful precision his academy training had honed, placing each foot deliberately to minimize noise. The main path had long since disappeared behind him as he ventured deeper into the forest, following the faint traces of disturbance that suggested the passage of a large predator. Bent branches, scratched bark, a depression in the soft earth that could only have been made by a creature of significant weight landing from a height. The thornback was moving north, toward the designated containment facility, whether by coincidence or some remnant of intelligence working through the neural dampeners. It was following a route that would eventually bring it to the same destination as the cadets seeking to capture it. Kai paused beside a massive tree, its trunk wider than he was tall, to consult his scanner. The device was calibrated to detect the specific thermal signature of the thornback, but the density of the canopy overhead interfered with its range. He would need to get closer. A faint sound, the snap of a twig, alerted him to another presence nearby. Kai froze, his hand moving instinctively to the neural disruptor at his belt. But the figure that emerged from the foliage was not the predator he sought. Still playing tracker? Human? Lyra's voice carried a note of disdain. The rest of us passed this position 20 minutes ago. Kai relaxed slightly but kept his guard up. Competition among cadets could be as dangerous as the specimens they pursued. The thornback is circling, he replied, pointing to the signs he'd been following. It's doubling back on its own trail to confuse pursuers. The others are following a false lead. Lyra's compound eyes glinted as she assessed the evidence he indicated. Despite her hostility, she was an excellent student of predatory behavior. Clever, she admitted reluctantly. But knowing its strategy doesn't help if you can't overcome its defenses. Those neural dampeners make your usual tricks useless. They make direct empathic connection impossible, Kai corrected. But understanding doesn't always require a mental link. Sometimes observation is enough. Lyra made a clicking sound that might have been laughter. Observation won't stop those thorns when they're piercing your soft human flesh. Or have you forgotten what they can do? The question struck too close to memories Kai had been suppressing all morning. He turned away, resuming his tracking without responding. To his surprise, Lyra fell into step beside him. "I've brought something that might interest you," she said, removing a small device from her own field kit. Anti-psionic gear. Vraxizian military issue. It creates a field that prevents neural intrusion or extrusion. Kai glanced at the device skeptically. Why would that interest me? The thornback already has dampeners preventing any empathic link. Because, Lyra replied, a note of smug satisfaction in her voice. This device doesn't just block psionic activity. It can also neutralize other psionic technology, including neural dampeners. Kai stopped walking, his full attention now on the device in Lyra's hand. "You're saying you could disable the dampeners, make the Thornback susceptible to empathic contact again?" "Potentially," she acknowledged. "But why would I help you demonstrate your peculiar talent when I could use this to prove the superiority of Vraxizian containment methods?" A suspicion formed in Kai's mind. "You can't operate it properly, can you? The device requires psionic ability to fine-tune its effects." Lyra's mandibles clicked in irritation, confirming his guess. "My species evolved physical superiority, not mental parlor tricks. The device requires calibration that I cannot provide." "So you're proposing an alliance?" Kai concluded. "I help you calibrate the device, and in return, you help me establish contact with the Thornback. A temporary arrangement of convenience," Lyra specified. "Once the dampeners are neutralized, we return to individual competition." Kai considered the offer. Working with Lyra was risky. She was as likely to turn on him as help him, but the opportunity to bypass the neural dampeners was too valuable to dismiss. "Agreed," he said finally. "But we establish some ground rules. No lethal force against the Thornback. The objective is capture, not killing." "Your sentimentality is noted," Lyra replied dismissively. "But I accept your terms. The alive specimen is worth more academic credit anyway." They continued moving through the forest, now working together to track the Thornback's path. Kai noticed that Lyra matched his careful movements, respecting his knowledge of Earth predators despite her general disdain for humans. "Why do you hate my species so much?" he asked, after they had traveled in silence for some time. Lyra's compound eyes swiveled toward him, their faceted surfaces revealing nothing of her thoughts. "I don't hate humans. I find your contradictions unsettling." "Contradictions? You come from a world that produces nightmares, yet you pretend to be above the violence that shaped you," she explained. "You study the most efficient killers in the galaxy with admiration, then advocate for their preservation. You develop the capacity to destroy your entire planet a dozen times over, yet you speak of balance and harmony." She leaped gracefully over a fallen log, her exoskeleton gleaming in a shaft of sunlight. "Vraxizians understand what we are. Predators. We do not apologize for our nature or pretend to be something else." Kai considered her words as they continued tracking. "Understanding our nature doesn't mean surrendering to it," he said finally. "Humans have the capacity for destruction, yes, but also for creation, for empathy. We contain multitudes, as do most sentient species." "Philosophy will not help you when facing a Thornback panther," Lyra retorted. "Neither will Vraxizian pragmatism alone," Kai countered. "The Thornback doesn't just hunt with claws and teeth. It hunts with intelligence. To capture it, we need to outthink it, not just overpower it." Before Lyra could respond, a distant scream echoed through the forest, not the cry of an animal, but the unmistakable sound of a sentient in pain. "That came from ahead," Kai said, already moving faster through the undergrowth. "It sounded like the Orcidian," Lyra observed, keeping pace easily. "Your friend Drav." They increased their speed, abandoning stealth for urgency. The path led them to a clearing where sunlight streamed through a gap in the canopy. At its center, a scene of chaos greeted them. Drav lay on the ground, one arm clearly broken, his thick fur matted with blood. Mira knelt beside him, her skin pulsing with distressed red light as she attempted to apply a medical stabilizer from her field kit. Surrounding them were 3 other cadets, all bearing injuries of varying severity. And circling the clearing, moving with liquid grace through the shadows at its edge, was the Thornback panther. Kai's breath caught in his throat at the sight of the creature. It was larger than he remembered from his childhood, nearly 5 meters from nose to tail, its serpentine body covered in iridescent scales that shifted from emerald to sapphire depending on the angle of light. The bony protrusions along its spine, the thorns that gave the species its name, were fully extended, quivering slightly with the tension of muscles prepared to strike. But it was the eyes that seized Kai's attention. 6 of them, arranged in a triangular pattern on its wedge-shaped head, glowing with an unnatural purple light that indicated the presence of the neural dampeners. The thornback moved with a predator's patience, testing the group's defenses with feinted charges before retreating again into the shadows. It was toying with them. Kai realized, using intelligence that should have been suppressed by the dampeners. "Something's wrong," he whispered to Lyra. "The dampeners aren't working properly. They should reduce the creature to instinctive behavior, but it's displaying complex hunting strategies." Lyra studied the scene with calculating precision. The Academy's specimens often develop adaptations to containment measures. Perhaps this one has partially overcome its neural restrictions. Or the dampeners are malfunctioning, Kai suggested. Either way, it makes the situation more dangerous and more unpredictable. As they watched, Mira helped Drav to his feet, supporting his massive frame with surprising strength. The other injured cadets formed a protective circle. Their neural disruptors pointed outward toward the shifting shadows where the thornback lurked. "We need to draw it away from them," Kai decided. "Give them a chance to retreat to the containment facility with Drav." "And how do you propose we do that?" Lyra asked skeptically. "Offer ourselves as more appealing prey?" Kai unclipped his neural disruptor and adjusted its settings. "Something like that. The thornback hunts by prioritizing threats. Right now, it's focused on the wounded and the weak. We need to make ourselves appear more dangerous, more worthy of its immediate attention." He aimed the disruptor at the canopy above the clearing and fired. The energy pulse struck a cluster of giant leaves, igniting them instantly. Fire, a primal threat that even the most sophisticated predators instinctively feared. The effect was immediate. The thornback's head whipped toward the sudden blaze. All 6 eyes fixed on the new danger. It released a high-pitched screech that sent birds scattering from nearby trees. "Mira," Kai called, stepping into the clearing where he could be seen. "Get everyone to the containment facility. We'll handle the thornback." Mira's skin flashed with acknowledgement, and she began coordinating the retreat of the injured cadets. The thornback, momentarily distracted by the fire, noticed the movement and tensed to spring. "Now, Lyra," Kai shouted. The Vraxesian activated her anti-psionic device, aiming it directly at the predator. A wave of invisible energy washed over the clearing. The purple glow in the thornback's eyes flickered, then stabilized again. Dimmer, but still present. Partial effect only, Lyra reported tensely. "The dampeners are resisting neutralization." The thornback focused its attention on them now, recognizing the new threat. It began a slow, deliberate stalk around the edge of the clearing, cutting off their retreat. "Keep trying," Kai urged, maintaining eye contact with the creature. "I'm going to attempt connection despite the dampeners." "That's suicide," Lyra hissed. "You'll fry your neural pathways." "I don't need a full connection," Kai explained, never breaking his gaze from the predator. "Just enough to communicate simple concepts. Danger, safety, choice." He began to lower his mental barriers, extending his consciousness toward the thornback as he had been taught, reaching not with force but with openness, offering connection rather than demanding it. The contact, when it came, was like plunging into ice water. Pain lanced through Kai's mind as he encountered the resistance of the dampeners. But beneath them, barely perceptible, was the presence of the thornback itself, confused, angry, and in pain. "Something's hurting it," Kai gasped, fighting to maintain the tenuous connection. "The dampeners aren't just blocking its higher functions, they're causing physical distress." Lyra adjusted her device, her compound eyes fixed on the readout. "The calibration is off," she realized. "These dampeners weren't designed for Earth neurophysiology. They're overloading its neural pathways." The thornback screamed again, a sound of rage and agony that shook leaves from nearby trees. It charged suddenly, not at Kai or Lyra, but at the retreating group of injured cadets. Without hesitation, Kai threw himself into its path, abandoning all attempt at mental subtlety and instead broadcasting a single desperate command. "Stop!" The thornback's charge faltered. It skidded to a halt mere meters from Kai, its 6 eyes blinking in confusion. For a moment, predator and human regarded each other, the monster and the man, both products of Earth's unforgiving evolutionary crucible. Then the purple glow in the thornback's eyes flared painfully bright. It reared back, thorns fully extended, and released a scream of pure anguish. "The dampeners are destabilizing," Lyra called. "They're causing a cascade failure in its nervous system." Kai understood immediately what that meant. The thornback was dying, its neural pathways burning out under the strain of malfunctioning technology. And worse, in its death throes, it would lash out at everything around it. He had seconds to make a choice. Option 1, use his neural disruptor at maximum setting. A direct hit might stop the thornback's heart instantly, a mercy killing that would prevent further suffering and protect the retreating cadets. Option 2, attempt a full empathic link despite the dampeners, risk his own mind to try to stabilize the creature's failing nervous system. Success was unlikely. Permanent neural damage to himself was almost certain. As the thornback convulsed, its thorns rattling with agony, Kai made his decision. He dropped his neural disruptor and stepped forward, hands empty, mind open. "What are you doing?" Lyra demanded, her voice sharp with alarm. "The only thing I can," Kai replied, and surrendered his consciousness to the connection. This time, the pain was beyond description, like having every nerve ending set aflame simultaneously. Kai felt his physical body crumple to the forest floor, but his awareness was elsewhere, flowing through the barrier of the dampeners and into the chaotic maelstrom of the thornback's dying mind. Fragmented images assaulted him, a steel cage, bright lights, masked figures injecting something into scaled flesh. The trauma of capture, the confusion of the biodome, the agony of the dampeners disrupting natural thought patterns. And beneath it all, a more fundamental consciousness, the essence of what it meant to be a thornback panther. To hunt, to survive, to protect territory and offspring. Kai pushed deeper, past the creature's pain and fear, seeking the core of its being. The dampeners fought him, sending waves of resistance that threatened to shatter his own identity. But he persisted, offering not domination but partnership, not control but cooperation. In the physical world, the thornback had gone still, its 6 eyes fixed on Kai's prone form. Lyra stood frozen, her anti-psionic device forgotten in her hand, as she witnessed something no academy training had prepared her for, a human and an Earth predator locked in silent communion. Within the mental link, Kai found what he sought, the neural pathways being destroyed by the dampeners. With delicate precision, he began to redirect the creature's thoughts around the damaged areas, creating new connections to bypass the failing ones. It was like trying to rebuild a bridge while crossing it, with both ends collapsing into an abyss. Every moment brought new damage, new challenges, but gradually, the chaos began to subside. The pain receded. Stability, tenuous but real, emerged from the turmoil. Kai had no idea how much time had passed when he felt another presence enter the link. Not the thornback, but Lyra, her consciousness tentative and alien, but undeniably there. She had recalibrated her device, he realized, not to block psionic activity, but to amplify it, creating a bridge that allowed her, a non-psionic species, to join the connection he had established. Together, they worked to stabilize the thornback's mind, Kai providing the empathic link and Lyra using her device to gradually neutralize the dampeners without triggering another cascade failure. When Kai finally opened his physical eyes again, He found himself lying on the forest floor. The massive form of the thornback panther curled around him protectively. Its eyes no longer glowed purple, but had returned to their natural amber hue. Lyra knelt nearby, her exoskeleton glistening with exertion, the anti-psionic device smoking slightly in her hand. "You," she said, mandibles clicking with what might have been respect, "are either the bravest or the most foolish human I have ever encountered." Kai sat up slowly, his head pounding with the aftermath of the neural connection. The thornback shifted to accommodate his movement, but remained close. Its behavior now that of a bonded companion rather than a predator. "Did everyone make it to the containment facility?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "Yes," Lyra confirmed, "though I imagine they're wondering why we haven't arrived with our captured specimen." Kai placed a hand on the thornback's scaled flank, feeling the steady rhythm of its breathing. "We'll bring it in," he said, "but not as a captive, as a research partner." Lyra's compound eyes glinted with skepticism. "Commander Helion won't approve of such sentimentality." "This isn't about sentiment," Kai explained. "The dampeners were killing it, yes, but they were also preventing us from learning from it. A thornback's intelligence rivals that of many sentient species. With a proper empathic link established, it can teach us more about Earth's ecosystem than we could learn from a dozen dissections." He stood carefully, still and steady. The thornback rose with him, its massive body flowing like liquid metal as it adjusted its posture to stay beside him. "Besides," he added with a faint smile, "I think the trial instructions were to capture the specimen and bring it to the containment facility. They never specified how we should accomplish that, or what state the specimen should be in when we arrived." Lyra made that clicking sound again, definitely laughter this time. "You're manipulating the parameters of the assignment. How very predatory of you." "I prefer to think of it as adaptation," Kai replied, "another Earth specialty." Together, they began the journey toward the containment facility. A Vraxizian duelist, a human empath, and a thornback panther moving in unlikely harmony through the artificial forest. Behind them, the small fire Kai had started to distract the predator had already been extinguished by the biodome's automated systems. But something else had been ignited, an understanding that would soon challenge the Academy's most fundamental assumptions about Earth and its inhabitants. The north end of the Earth biodome housed the containment facility, a reinforced structure designed to safely hold specimens during and after field trials. Its exterior resembled a research outpost, with observation windows and multiple secure entrances. Inside, a series of specialized cells could accommodate everything from microscopic parasites to creatures the size of small spacecraft. As Kai and Lyra approached with the thornback moving calmly beside them, they could see a crowd gathered at the facility's main entrance. Word of their unusual procession had evidently traveled faster than they had. Commander Helion stood at the forefront of the assembled cadets and faculty, his breathing apparatus hissing with what might have been agitation. Beside him, Professor Dravik watched their approach with undisguised fascination. "Cadet Arden," Helion called as they came within speaking distance. "Explain yourself immediately." Kai continued forward until he stood before the commander, the thornback remaining at his side. He could feel the creature's tension through their empathic link. It recognized Helion as one of those who had been present during its capture and implantation. "Sir, we encountered complications with the neural dampeners," Kai reported formally. "They were causing severe neural degradation in the specimen. To preserve both the creature's life and the success of the field trial, we were forced to neutralize the dampeners and establish an alternative method of control." Helion's eyes narrowed. "Alternative method?" "An empathic bond," Professor Dravik interjected, stepping forward to examine the thornback with professional interest. "Remarkable. The connection appears stable despite the previous presence of dampeners." I've never seen such a rapid adaptation. This was not the objective of the field trial, Helion stated coldly. The purpose was to test containment protocols under combat conditions, not to form relationships with dangerous predators. With respect, Commander. Lyra surprised everyone by speaking up. The objective was to capture the specimen alive and bring it to the containment facility. We have accomplished that goal. Helion's breathing apparatus hissed louder. Cadet Voss, I would not have expected you to defend such unorthodox methods. I defend results, Lyra replied, her mandibles clicking firmly. And this result exceeds expectations. Instead of a sedated or physically restrained specimen, we have delivered one capable of ongoing research interaction. The academic value is substantially higher. Professor Dravik was circling the Thornback now, her scanner recording data as she moved. The neural pathways are already showing signs of recovery, she reported. And the empathic bond appears to be facilitating accelerated healing. This is unprecedented. She turned to Kai. How did you bypass the dampeners? I didn't. Initially, he explained. I attempted connection despite them, which was painful but possible. Then Cadet Voss used a Vraxisian anti-psionic device to gradually neutralize their effect, while I maintained the mental link. You worked together? Professor Dravik raised an eyebrow, looking between the human and the Vraxisian. A temporary arrangement of convenience, Lyra stated, echoing her earlier words to Kai. One that saved the specimen's life and potentially opened new research possibilities, Kai added. Commander Helion had been observing the Thornback with evident skepticism. The creature appears docile now, but these empathic bonds are notoriously unstable. What happens when it reverts to natural behavior? The bond doesn't suppress its nature, Kai corrected. It facilitates understanding between us. The Thornback remains a predator, but now it's a predator that can distinguish between prey and partners. As if to demonstrate this point, the Thornback's attention suddenly shifted to a small rodent that had emerged from the underbrush nearby. With startling speed, it launched itself forward, caught the creature in its jaws, and returned to Kai's side, all before anyone could react. Its hunting instincts remain intact, Kai observed calmly, but its aggression is now directed appropriately. Professor Dravik's scanner continued to record data. Fascinating. The neural patterns suggest a form of cooperative intelligence developing. This could revolutionize our understanding of Earth predators. Commander Helion seemed less impressed. Regardless of the scientific interest, this outcome deviates from established protocol. The field trial was designed to test conventional containment methods, not experimental bonding techniques. Sometimes deviation from protocol leads to innovation. Professor Dravik countered. Isn't that what we're here to teach? Not just the application of established knowledge, but the discovery of new possibilities. A murmur of agreement ran through the gathered cadets. Even those who had been injured by the Thornback earlier were now watching with curiosity rather than fear. Helion's posture remained rigid, but something in his demeanor shifted slightly. The Academy Council will need to review this incident in detail. Until then, the specimen will be kept under observation in the containment facility. With the empathic bond maintained, Professor Dravik added firmly. Breaking it now could cause significant neural damage to both cadet and creature. Helion inclined his head in reluctant agreement. Cadet Arden will report to the medical bay for examination after the specimen is secured. Cadet Voss will provide a detailed analysis of the anti-psionic device used in this procedure. With that, he turned and strode back into the containment facility, his displeasure evident in every movement. As the crowd began to disperse, Mira approached Kai, her skin pulsing with colors of amazement and concern. You actually bonded with it, she said, keeping a respectful distance from the Thornback. After what happened to your family, I didn't think you'd ever want to be near one of these creatures again. Kai's surprise must have shown on his face, because Mira quickly added, Your file is accessible to student advisors. I read it when you first arrived at the academy." "I didn't know that," Kai admitted, feeling strangely relieved that someone else knew his history. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" she asked. "It would have exempted you from this trial entirely." Kai glanced at the thornback, feeling the steady pulse of its consciousness alongside his own. "Because running from fear doesn't eliminate it," he said quietly. "Sometimes you have to face the monster to discover it's not what you thought it was." Professor Dravik, who had overheard this exchange, approached them. "A philosophy worthy of further exploration. Cadet Arden, perhaps you would be willing to document this experience for the Academy archives. This could represent a significant advancement in our understanding of interspecies neural bonding." "I'd be happy to, Professor," Kai agreed. "But first, we need to ensure the thornback is comfortable in the containment facility. The environment should replicate its natural habitat as closely as possible." "I'll see to the arrangements personally," Professor Dravik assured him. "This specimen has become far too valuable for standard containment protocols." As they began to move toward the facility entrance, Lyra fell into step beside Kai. "You should have killed it," she said, but without her usual antagonism. "It would have been easier, safer." "Easier isn't always better," Kai replied, "and safety is rarely achieved through destruction." Lyra's compound eyes studied him with new intensity. "Your world creates monsters, human, but perhaps it creates other things as well." "Every world does," Kai said. "The challenge is recognizing which creations deserve to survive." Together, they entered the containment facility, where the next phase of their unexpected collaboration and the Academy's understanding of Earth was about to begin. The days following the field trial brought significant changes to the Academy's approach to Earth specimens. Professor Dravik, intrigued by the successful empathic bonding with the thornback panther, initiated a comprehensive review of all specimens in the Earth collection. Many, she discovered, had been fitted with similar neural dampeners, devices that not only prevented mental connection but potentially impaired the creature's natural intelligence. Kai found himself at the center of this re-evaluation, spending hours in the containment facility documenting his experience and helping to establish protocols for safe empathic communication with other Earth predators. The thornback, now officially designated ESP-117 but informally called Thorn by the research team, proved to be an invaluable partner in these efforts. Through their bond, Kai was able to learn details about Earth's ecosystem that had never been recorded in scientific literature. The complex social structures of thornback packs, their role in maintaining forest health by controlling herbivore populations, and their remarkable capacity for problem-solving when hunting particularly elusive prey. On the 8th day after the field trial, Kai arrived at the containment facility to find Professor Dravik already there, reviewing data on a holographic display. The thornback lay on a specially designed platform nearby, its 6 eyes tracking Kai's entrance with evident recognition. "Ah, Cadet Arden." Professor Dravik greeted him. "Perfect timing. I've just received approval from the Academy Council for the next phase of our research." "What does that entail?" Kai asked, approaching the thornback and placing a hand on its scaled flank in greeting. Through their bond, he sensed contentment mingled with a familiar restlessness. The creature was well treated but missed the freedom of a larger territory. "We're going to attempt controlled interaction between ESP-117 and other Earth specimens," Professor Dravik explained, manipulating the holographic display to show a selection of creatures from the Academy's collection. Starting with herbivores to establish a baseline for interspecies communication, then progressing to other predators. Kai considered this as he maintained contact with the thornback. "It's possible," he said after consulting the creature's reactions through their bond. "But we'll need to proceed carefully. Thornbacks are territorial with other predators, especially those that compete for the same prey base. Precisely why this research is so valuable." Professor Dravik nodded. "We've been studying Earth's ecosystem through isolated specimens for decades. But the complex interactions between species have largely remained theoretical. With your empathic abilities as a bridge, we can observe these relationships directly. She adjusted the display again, bringing up a comprehensive map of the biodome. I'm proposing a controlled release of selected specimens into a segregated section of the rainforest habitat. With you and ESP-117 as observers and mediators, we could gather unprecedented data on natural behaviors. The idea was ambitious and risky, but Kai couldn't deny its potential value, both scientifically and philosophically. It represented a fundamental shift from the Academy's traditional approach of containment and examination to one of engagement and cooperation. I'll need to prepare, he said, already thinking through the mental disciplines that would be required to maintain empathic connections with multiple creatures simultaneously. And we should start with species that thornbacks wouldn't normally see as either prey or competition. Already arranged, Professor Dravik assured him. We'll begin tomorrow with a group of canopy dwellers, mainly arboreal herbivores that occupy ecological niches well above the thornback's hunting range. Their planning was interrupted by the arrival of Commander Hillian, his imposing frame filling the doorway of the research area. Since the field trial, he had maintained a distance from the project, his disapproval evident but contained by the Academy Council's interest in the results. Professor Dravik, he acknowledged with a curt nod. Cadet Arden, I've been instructed to inform you that your research presentation has been scheduled for the Central Assembly Hall in 2 weeks' time. The full Academy will be in attendance. Kai exchanged a glance with Professor Dravik. This was unexpected. Research presentations were typically limited to faculty and senior cadets in the relevant field of study. A full Academy assembly suggested higher stakes. May I ask what prompted this level of attention, Commander? Professor Dravik inquired. Hillian's breathing apparatus hissed softly. The Galactic Council has expressed interest in your findings. Specifically, they wish to review Earth's Monster Factory designation in light of Cadet Arden's demonstration. The implications were enormous. Planetary classifications weren't adjusted lightly. They influenced everything from trade regulations to security protocols to immigration policies throughout the galaxy. A change in Earth's designation could have far-reaching consequences for humanity's place in the interstellar community. I see, Professor Dravik said carefully. And what is your position on this matter, Commander? Hillian's gaze shifted to the thornback, which had risen to a more alert posture at his entrance. My position is irrelevant. The data will speak for itself, but I would caution against hasty conclusions based on a single specimen and a single human with unusual abilities. Of course, Professor Dravik agreed smoothly. Which is why our expanded research protocol is so important. The more comprehensive our data, the more informed the Council's decision will be. Hillian seemed about to respond when the thornback suddenly tensed, its attention fixing on the doorway behind him. A moment later, Lyra Voss appeared, her exoskeleton gleaming under the laboratory lights. Cadet Voss, Hillian acknowledged, stepping aside to allow her entry. You're not assigned to this research team. I've been granted observer status by Professor Dravik, Lyra replied, her mandibles clicking confidently. My experience with the anti-psionic device provides valuable technical perspective. This was news to Kai, but Professor Dravik nodded in confirmation. Cadet Voss's understanding of psionic field manipulation has been instrumental in refining our measurement protocols, and as a non-psionic observer, she provides an important control element in our research design. Hillian's disapproval was evident, but he merely inclined his head. Very well. I'll leave you to your preparations. But remember, Cadet Arden, the entire Academy will be evaluating not just your research, but your representation of Earth itself. I suggest you ensure your evidence is compelling. With that warning delivered, he departed, leaving an uncomfortable silence in his wake. He still thinks this is all a mistake, Kai observed once he was certain the commander was out of earshot. Commander Hillian has spent his career containing dangerous specimens. Professor Dravik said. The idea of cooperating with them challenges his fundamental worldview. Change is difficult for anyone, but especially for those who have built their identity around certain truths. Speaking of change, Kai turned to Lyra. I didn't know you'd joined the research team. The Vraxesian's compound eyes glinted. I submitted my application yesterday. Your methods are unorthodox, but the results are intriguing. My species values effective approaches, regardless of their origin. Through his bond with the Thornback, Kai sensed curiosity rather than hostility toward Lyra. The creature remembered her role in neutralizing the dampeners that had caused it such pain. We're planning a controlled release experiment tomorrow, he informed her. Multiple species interacting in a segregated section of the biodome. Your observation skills would be valuable. I'll be there, Lyra confirmed. Though I maintain that a more traditional containment approach should be developed as a fallback option, empathic bonds, while effective, are limited to those with your particular abilities. Actually, Professor Dravik interjected, that's another aspect of our research. Based on initial data, we believe the anti-psionic device used could potentially be modified to serve as a translator of sorts, allowing limited empathic communication for non-psionic species. Lyra's antennae twitched with evident interest. A technological solution that would have significant applications beyond just Earth specimens. Precisely, Professor Dravik agreed, which is why the Galactic Council is paying attention. This could represent a paradigm shift in xenobiological research methodology across all planetary classifications. As they continued discussing the technical details of the proposed device, Kai maintained his physical and mental connection with the Thornback. Through their bond, he sensed not just the creature's reactions to the conversation, but something deeper, a growing awareness of its role in something larger than itself. Earth had produced this predator, shaped it through millennia of evolutionary pressure into a perfect hunter. But it had also produced Kai, a human capable of bridging the divide between predator and prey, between monster and guardian. Perhaps that was Earth's true specialty, not just creating monsters, but creating the means to understand them. The morning of the research presentation arrived with a sense of momentous anticipation. The Central Assembly Hall, a vast amphitheater at the heart of the Academy, filled quickly with faculty, cadets, and distinguished visitors. Among the latter were representatives from the Galactic Council, their formal attire and security details marking them as officials of the highest rank. Kai stood in the preparation room adjacent to the main hall, reviewing his notes one final time. The past 2 weeks had been a whirlwind of research, documentation, and preparation. The controlled release experiments had yielded data beyond their most optimistic projections, demonstrating complex interspecies dynamics that challenged many long-held assumptions about Earth's ecosystem. Professor Dravik entered, her usual austere appearance enhanced by formal academic regalia. Are you ready, Cadet Arden? The hall is at capacity, and the council representatives are growing impatient. Kai nodded, setting aside his notes. As ready as I can be. Is Thorn in position? Yes. The transport team moved him to the demonstration chamber an hour ago. He seems unusually calm, considering the circumstances. He understands the importance of today, Kai explained. Our bond has evolved to include abstract concepts now, not just immediate sensations or intentions. Professor Dravik raised an eyebrow. Remarkable. You continue to exceed expectations. She hesitated, then added, There's something you should know before we begin. Commander Helion has prepared a rebuttal to our presentation. He'll speak immediately after us. Kai absorbed this news with resignation rather than surprise. I expected as much. He's never accepted the validity of empathic bonding as a containment method. It's more than that. Professor Dravik said, I believe he views your success as a direct challenge to the Academy's traditional approach to Death World specimens. If Earth's classification is revised, it could call into question decades of his work. Then we'll just have to ensure our evidence is irrefutable, Kai replied, echoing Helion's own words from 2 weeks earlier. A chime sounded, indicating that the presentation was ready to begin. Professor Dravik straightened her regalia and gave Kai an encouraging nod. "Remember," she said, "today isn't just about scientific data. It's about challenging perceptions, about Earth, about humans, and about what it means to study rather than simply contain." They entered the Central Assembly Hall together, walking down the central aisle toward the presentation platform. The amphitheater fell silent as they took their positions. Hundreds of faces from dozens of species turned toward them with expressions ranging from skepticism to curiosity. At the highest tier sat the Galactic Council representatives, 3 figures whose species and features were deliberately obscured by ceremonial robes and masks, embodying the Council's principle of species-blind judgment. Professor Dravik began the presentation with a formal overview of the research project's origins and methodology. She described the field trial that had led to the discovery of the neural dampener's harmful effects, the successful establishment of an empathic bond with the thornback panther, and the subsequent experiments with multiple Earth species. As she spoke, holographic displays illustrated her points with data visualizations, specimen profiles, and recorded observations from the controlled release experiments. The evidence built methodically, constructing a compelling case for a new understanding of Earth's ecosystem, one based on balance and interconnection rather than simply predation and survival. "And now," Professor Dravik concluded, "Cadet Arden will demonstrate the practical application of these findings through a live interaction with specimen ESP-117, the thornback panther." This was the moment the entire presentation had been building toward, and the one Kai had both anticipated and dreaded. A successful demonstration would validate their research beyond any theoretical argument. A failure would confirm every doubt Commander Helion had expressed. Kai stepped forward as a section of the platform retracted, revealing a transparent chamber below. Within it, the thornback moved with fluid grace, its iridescent scales catching the light as it paced the perimeter of its enclosure. A murmur ran through the assembly. Despite 2 weeks of carefully managed information releases about the research project, many present were seeing the thornback for the first time, and Earth's reputation as a monster factory was well earned. The creature's predatory beauty and obvious power provoked instinctive reactions of alarm in many species. ESP-117, known informally as Thorn, is a mature specimen of Panthera thoracis. Kai began, his voice steady despite the pressure of the moment. Indigenous to Earth's equatorial forests, thornbacks are apex predators with advanced sensory capabilities and problem-solving intelligence comparable to many sentient species. He activated the chamber's interface, causing one wall to become transparent. Beyond it lay a complex obstacle course containing various objects, puzzles, and potential food sources. "What you're about to witness is not control or dominance," Kai explained. "It is communication and cooperation between 2 species from the same evolutionary cradle, one human and one predator, both products of Earth's harsh but balanced ecosystem." Taking a deep breath, Kai opened his mind, extending his consciousness toward the thornback below. The familiar connection established itself immediately, stronger and clearer than it had been during their first chaotic bonding in the biodome. Through their shared awareness, Kai conveyed the purpose of the demonstration and the sequence of tasks they would complete together. The thornback's response was a complex mixture of understanding, anticipation, and, most surprisingly, pride. The creature had developed a sense of itself as a representative of its species, just as Kai represented humanity. "The first phase of our demonstration will show problem-solving capabilities," Kai announced to the assembly. "Without physical guidance or conventional training methods, Thorn will navigate a series of challenges based solely on empathic communication. He nodded to Professor Dravik, who activated the obstacle course, a series of barriers. Suspended platforms and concealed mechanisms filled the chamber adjacent to the Thornback's enclosure. At the far end, a containment unit held a small live prey animal, a non-sentient rodent specially bred for research purposes. The transparent wall between the chambers slid open, and the Thornback moved forward with purposeful grace. Through their bond, Kai provided context for the obstacles but not specific solutions. He wanted to demonstrate the creature's independent intelligence, not just its responsiveness to his guidance. The assembly watched in hushed fascination as the Thornback navigated the course. It leaped across gaps with precise calculation, used its thorns to manipulate mechanical switches, and even deliberately triggered certain obstacles to create new pathways. When it reached the prey container, it paused, looking back toward Kai with evident question in its posture. The final challenge, Kai explained to the audience, involves choice rather than instinct. The containment unit can be opened in two ways, one that releases the prey for hunting, and one that delivers it already euthanized, but with a delayed reward system. Through their bond, Kai presented both options without preference, allowing the Thornback to decide. After a moment's consideration, the predator chose the second option, activating a sequence that humanely euthanized the prey and then delivered it through a timed mechanism. Thorn has selected delayed gratification over immediate hunting satisfaction. Kai observed, this demonstrates not just intelligence, but the capacity for decision-making that transcends instinctive behavior patterns. As the Thornback received its reward, Kai felt a wave of satisfaction through their bond, not just for the food, but for the successful completion of the demonstration. The creature understood that it was performing for an audience, that its actions were being evaluated. For the second phase of our demonstration, Kai continued, we will show that this empathic connection is not limited to a single human with unusual abilities. Through technology developed in collaboration with Cadet Lyra Voss, we can now extend this communication capability to others. On cue, Lyra rose from her seat in the front row and joined Kai on the platform. She carried a refined version of her anti-psionic device. Now reconfigured as Dravik had suggested, a translator rather than a blocker. This prototype empathic field amplifier, Lyra explained to the assembly, her mandibles clicking precisely to emphasize key points, creates a bridge between psionic and non-psionic neurological patterns. It cannot replace natural empathic ability, but it can facilitate basic communication across the species barrier. She activated the device, which emitted a soft blue glow. With Cadet Arden serving as the primary link, I will now establish secondary contact with the Thornback. Kai felt the moment Lyra's consciousness brushed against the edges of his bond with Thorn, tentative at first, then more confident as the amplifier stabilized the connection. The Thornback's awareness expanded to include her, its 6 eyes fixing on the Vraxisian with new recognition. Through this three-way link, Lyra directed the Thornback through a series of simple movements, circling the chamber, approaching the transparent wall, raising and lowering its thorns. Each command was executed perfectly, demonstrating that the empathic connection was functional even for a species with no natural psionic capability. The implications of this technology extend far beyond Earth specimens. Lyra addressed the assembly. It represents a new paradigm for interspecies communication throughout the galaxy, one based on understanding rather than subjugation. As she spoke, Kai noticed a subtle shift in the audience's energy. The initial skepticism had given way to genuine interest, even excitement. Even the masked council representatives were leaning forward, their attention fixed on the demonstration below. Professor Dravik stepped forward to deliver the research conclusion. Based on our findings, we propose that Earth's classification as a monster factory is incomplete and potentially misleading. While Earth undeniably produces formidable predators, it also produces the biological and neurological frameworks necessary for communication with those predators. She gestured to Kai and Lyra, standing together beside the chamber where the Thornback now rested calmly. The evidence before you demonstrates that Earth's true evolutionary specialty is not merely creating monsters, but creating the means to understand and cooperate with them. We therefore recommend that Earth's classification be amended to reflect this more comprehensive assessment. A murmur ran through the assembly as the implications of this recommendation became clear. Planetary classifications were fundamental to how the galactic community perceived and interacted with worlds and their inhabitants. A change to Earth's designation would ripple through countless policies, protocols, and perceptions. As the presentation concluded, the central platform reconfigured to accommodate the next speaker. Commander Helion ascended to take his position, his posture rigid and his breathing apparatus hissing with barely contained tension. "Esteemed colleagues, honored council representatives," he began, his vocoder translating his native speech patterns with mechanical precision. "We have witnessed an impressive display of neurological manipulation and technological innovation, but we must not allow ourselves to be seduced by spectacle into abandoning scientific rigor." He activated his own holographic display, showing footage from Earth, natural disasters, predator attacks, disease outbreaks, and other dangers that had earned the planet its fearsome reputation. Earth remains objectively one of the most dangerous worlds in charted space. Helion continued, "Its predators are among the most efficient killers, its pathogens among the most virulent, its natural disasters among the most destructive. A single demonstration with a single specimen under controlled conditions does not negate these facts." His gaze fixed on Kai. "Moreover, Cadet Arden represents a statistically insignificant sample of humanity. His unusual empathic abilities are not representative of his species as a whole. To revise Earth's classification based on one individual's exceptional characteristics would be scientifically unsound." Helion turned to address the council representatives directly. "I submit that while Cadet Arden's research is worthy of continued study, it is premature to consider any revision to Earth's classification. The safety of the galactic community must take precedence over premature inclusivity.